Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
All right, cool. So to start us off, the problem I encountered with Microsoft Forms. So if I were to try and create a form right now using Microsoft Forms, let's say you have a use case where you require people outside the organization to fill in a form, and that form requires them to upload some sort of document. So if your first thought would be using Microsoft Forms, so let's try that out with Microsoft Forms. Here's the file upload, and you might think of using this. However, the issue with this is if I were to go to the settings and try to change who can fill out this form and say anyone can respond, as you can see, this option is disabled. And if I hover on this icon, it says file upload is only available when only people in the tenant, which is this MSFT, is selected as a setting. So that is a limitation with Microsoft Forms. It doesn't allow people outside the organization to upload documents through Microsoft Forms. So if I were to remove it now, I remove the file upload and I go back to settings. Now I can say anyone can respond. So anonymous responses that do not require a sign in. So that is the issue today with today's demo. That's the issue we're trying to solve. Excuse me. So to start us off, the idea is we create a custom HTML form. And through that custom HTML form, we add the fields that we want the anonymous people to fill in. And in that form, it will include a file upload option. So anyone can put a file upload regardless of whether they're inside the organization or not. So to start us off, we will be designing our HTML form. So to start us off, I'll use an Emmet abbreviation for HTML5 template. So you write HTML:5, and if you say enter, it gives you the skeleton for an HTML document. And from here, we can rename our HTML file, I mean the page, and say custom form. And in the body, we will add our form. And to save time, I already gone ahead beforehand and designed a form for us that we'll use just to save time, so you don't have to sit through watching me write the form from scratch. So here's the code, and let's have a look. Here's the form. So we will be using Bootstrap for the styling for this particular demo. Just to keep it simple, it's a form. And here's our form, has a ID application form. And in the form, we have a first name, which has an input that is required. We have last name, also required, email required, and the stuff today, the file upload, which in this case will be our motivational letter, is this input right here, and it accepts PDF documents. So if we were to save this and test out our form, so I'll save this and go to our browser and refresh, and here is our form. First name, last name, email, and the motivational letter, which is a file upload. As you can see, we haven't actually imported the stylings from Bootstrap, so we can do that quickly. I have a link here, which is the dependencies from Bootstrap that are required for the styling. So I'll just grab that quickly and paste it out here. So this is from Bootstrap. Save it, go back to our page and refresh, and there our form is now styled properly and it's looking smart. So from here, what we have to do now is make a handler function to capture whatever the user will fill in on our form. So we go back to Visual Studio, and we'll have to make a script tag here. We will have our HTML, our JavaScript and the functions to handle what happens when you submit the document. So start it off, and we got some Copilot helping us out, but we don't need the help right now. So I'll type it out, JavaScript. Right, and there's a script tag with JavaScript code. So to start us off, we have to create a handler function, and there's Copilot again offering suggestions, but for now we'll just write out the handler function by hand. Handle form submission, which is a function, and that function will accept an event, and you'll see why. Cool. So a handler function for submitting a form will take an event, and for that event, we want to prevent the default behavior of the form. So we want to indicate what happens when the form is submitted and not leave it to HTML to determine what to do with the data. So we start off, we say event prevent, then we have to get our form document. And with the form document, we're getting the elements by the ID, which I showed up here. Here's the form. So we get that form elements using this document.get by ID. And why we're doing this is because we want to get the form data. Now here, Copilot is helping us out. This is what we want to do. So we'll accept that suggestion. And with that data, we want to get the entries from the form. And here is Copilot again helping us out. We'll accept that. So what that does is it captures it takes the data from the form when we submit we click the submit button, and it will get the fields from the form. And how it gets those fields, it uses the name of the inputs. As you can see here, we have name set to first name for the first name input. And for the last name input, we have name to last name. Same thing with email, and the same thing for the motivational letter. So if we were to test it out now, we'll console.log to see what the data has. So we'll just test it out for now. And before we test it out, we can add, we should add an event listener on when the page is loaded. And what we want to do is actually attach this event handler to our form. So the way we do that would be, here Copilot is suggesting, yes, that's what we want. So again, it will get the form by the ID and attach an event listener, which is handle form submission to our form. But since we define the handler function taking a parameter of an event, we also have to show that here. So it will take an event, and the event will be here as a parameter. Cool. So let's test it out. We go back to our form, and so we can see what the console log has. Let's click inspect so we can see the developer tools. Here's the console. Okay, so we can test it out now. John Joe, I'm just filling in the form, example, and we upload the file. Cool. So when I click submit, we should see the output there of what data has, and there is our outputs. So as I explained, the name attributes here, the first name is from this tag here. So it creates the form data and it assigns them this name depending on what was put as an input on the input field here. So as you can see, first name is John, last name is Doe, email, and we have motivational letter as a file object. Cool. So everything seems to be working just fine now. Now, the thing we have to fix is the motivational letter. So this file object here, what we actually want from the file object is the file content, so the contents of the file. And as you can see here, we don't actually have a field that holds the file content unless we open the, we have to resolve a promise which will give us the file content that we need, so we can use that data and send it to our PowerAutomate flow, which will create the document. I'm sure it's confusing right now, but as we work through it, I'm sure you'll notice what I mean. So let's get back to that. And now, since we already saw the console log, we can remove this. So to start us off, we said we need to get the motivational letters file content. So the way we do that, create a constant variable, name it motivational letter underscore file content. Now, from here, as I mentioned, I said currently the motivational letter is, the content for the motivational letter is stored inside a promise. So we have to resolve that promise to get the content that we actually need. So the way we do that, and here's Copilot helping us out. Let's accept that. And the promise, this creates a new promise object, which takes which has a resolve and reject, which will be functions. And from here, we have a file reader, which will read the contents of the motivational letter and store it in this motivational letter file contents constant variable. So let me just check if everything is in order. File reader, create file as data, and here we actually need to have it as an event. Let me just sort this out. So event target dot results. And all right, cool. So what this will do is it will convert the file content into a base64 format string, which we will use to send the file contents over the HTTP to an endpoint on our PowerAutomate flow, which will capture that file content information. So to see what the base64 looks like, we will console.log the contents of motivational letter file contents to see how, just to see how it looks like. So we save that, go back to the page, refresh and again, fill in the info and example on attach our file and we submit. And it's showing the promise here. And this is what we have to resolve. So it wasn't resolved. Get back here. Excuse me. So we have to resolve the promise. Let me check. It is event target resolve. Data.motivational letter. Maybe let me try moving this down. Excuse me. Just trying to find the issue here. So it is resolve, which is event.target, right? Then reject, which will reject the error, and read data as. Oh, okay, sorry. Since it's a promise, we have to use an await key. Yeah, don't know how we missed that. So we have to use the await key. And this works with promise. And here, as you can see, await, it says await expression only allowed within async functions. So that means we have to change our event handler to an async function. So we do that, async function. Right. So async function awaits, then yeah, I think that should work. Let's try it again. Refresh, join DOM at full such a file. And there it is. And that will be the contents of our PDF as a base64 string, which we will need to send to our automate flow, and the automate flow will handle converting this back into the document. So we need this so we can send it over the HTTP to the endpoints on our PowerAutomate flow. So with that said, we can continue and remove this. So now we will make use of the fetch API, which comes standard on browsers. So that what the fetch API will do is send a post request to our endpoints with the data that we captured from the form, right? So the first parameter is the URL which we want to send to, and this will be our endpoint URL. And this endpoint URL we will get when we have created our PowerAutomate flow. So we'll come back to this later. So it's the URL. Then we have to specify the method. Sorry. All right, so we have to specify what type of method it is. It is a post method, since we'll be sending data, and that post method, excuse me. Right. So it's the post method. Then we have to include headers, and the headers will help us specify the content type. There's Copilot helping us out, which will be JSON, which will send over the HTTP containing the data. Then from there is the body of what we actually want to send to our endpoint. And here Copilot's helping us again. Since we specified that we'll be sending over JSON data, we have to convert our JavaScript object into JSON so it can be sent over the HTTP. Right, so we say JSON dot stringify, and what we stringify will be the data from the form. But before that, let's make a reformatted data variable. So we will say const formatted data. So with formatted data, what we want to do is make a predefined structure of the information you want to send over HTTP, so that our PowerAutomate can know which fields it expects to receive, in what way, in what format. So that's what we'll do now. What we need is first name. So it will be first name, and first name will be data.firstname. And this data.firstname is actually the data we got from the form. Remember, earlier on, I showed you the output of data. It has this as an option there. And then last name, which will be data.lastname. Then we will have our email, yes, data.email. Then it's the motivational letter, which will also have an object, and in that object we'll have the file name. Sorry, let me do it in order. It's the file name, and we have to specify the file type, which will be data.motivational letter type, right? Then the file content of the motivational letter, so it's file content, which is which is this variable right here, the constant, which is motivational letter underscore file content. So I'll just copy that variable and paste it here. Right, so we have formatted our data, and we can take this formatted data. So I'll copy the variable again and paste it here on the body of in the Fetch API. Right, so with that done, let me just check. So it is the header, the body, right? Then the header, the body. Cool, I think that's it. And that's the Fetch API done, the method. Let me just format this. So yeah, everything seems to look good. Now, the final thing we want to do is show some type of message once the person has selected submit, like an alert that will say your submission has been captured successfully. So to do that, we will make use of this div. So this div will act as our render area. So what we will do is when the person clicks submit, we will remove this form and put the alert instead, saying, okay, your response has been captured. So we will use this ID, which is root. And the way we'll do that is make a constant, call it root, and again say document dot get element by ID root. Right, then we say root dot inner HTML. So it will what's inside the root div is what is in HTML, and we'll convert that to yeah, thank you for your application, or yeah, we leave it like that. Thank you for your application. So this will show up when the person has submitted the form. So since we don't have a endpoint URL yet, we'll comment this out and see how the form will behave. How it will behave once we have the URL and like everything works in order. So this should be it for now. Let's test out our form again. So it is our famous John. Go.j, example. Attach the file and click submit and see the form is gone now. It says thank you for your application. Then at this point, if with our Fetch API, it will send that information to our PowerAutomate endpoint, and that PowerAutomate will handle managing the data. So the idea is it will take that data and store it on a SharePoint list somewhere. So with that form done, let's go to our PowerAutomate flow and create the flow itself. So this is PowerAutomate. I'm at my flows, and what we want to do is build a automated cloud flow. So we'll name this flow as demo for submission. And let me just copy the name, demo. I'll just copy this and skip for now. I'll rename it. Cool. So as a trigger, what we want to have as a trigger on our automate flow is HTTP request. It's just loading. While it does that, let me just rename the flow to demo form submission. So trying to find the trigger for the automate flow here. My internet is having issues, so probably why it's taking so long. HTTP paste. Yeah, while we wait for that, hopefully everybody's still keeping.
Yeah, we're keeping up. It looks amazing, and pretty sure that internet connectivity is everyone's kryptonite.
It's the worst enemy.
Yes, of course.
Maybe I should try doing it again. Perhaps. Let me try creating it again. Really had the momentum going, and now this.
Yeah, internet connectivity is never a great friend. You always hope that the demo gods are always with you, most especially if you're gonna do a demo that requires something that's hosted on the cloud.
Problem. Maybe I should try switching my networks. Maybe that will help. Then
Yeah.
I have, yeah, can I try that?
Yeah, of course you can.
All right, I've switched. Hopefully you can still see my screen. Let's try this again. All right, let's try this again. New flow, automated cloud flow, skip. Then HTTP request. And right, this is the trigger we want. And keep in mind, this is a premium feature. So if you were to want to use it for yourself, you have to ensure you have the proper licenses for PowerAutomate to make use of it. And in my case, I have the license, so it will work. So yeah, we got the trigger. And remember, I mentioned here on the Fetch API that we'll need an endpoint URL. And we will get that URL is here. It will be generated once we save our flow. So let me just rename my flow. So it is demo mission. Cool. And let me just add another item so I can save the flow, because it needs 2 steps at least to save. And yeah, just leave it like that for now and save. Right, so we've saved our flow and it has generated our URL for us, so we can copy it here when we want to make use of it. But for now, we need to define the body schema for our JSON that we will receive from the form. Remember, we converted our JavaScript object into a JSON string, and it will be received here when this flow is triggered, when the endpoint, like data, is sent to this endpoint. So the way we want to do it, we can provide sample payload, so it will generate a schema for us. So we have it as an object, and on this sample payload, the way we want it to look like is the same way as it looks here on our formatted data, which is the predetermined schema. So like it knows which items to expect, our endpoint that is. So we have first name, which will be a string, last name also a string, email, and motivational letter, which will have an object of file name, file type, and the file content. Cool. So with that in mind, go back. So it was first name, which will be a string. So we can just say text for now. It was last name, also text or string. Then email address, which is also text. Then will be a motivational letter. Motivational. How do I name it? Sorry, let me check here. It's motivation letter. I just copy it. So it is motivation letter, which will take an object, and that object is a file name, which is the type string, and type. Basically, everything is a string here. And lastly, it's the file content, which is also going to be text. So let me just double check that I named the values as they are. So file content, file type. Yeah, it should be fine. Yeah, then we can say done, and it generated the body schema for us. First name, type string, last name, email, and motivational letter, which is an object that has file name, file type, and file content. Cool. So we can save that again. Right. So now with this compose, we actually need to reformat our file contents. Since it is base 64, we have to make it in a manner such that our PowerAutomate flow understands the structure of the file contents. So I'll show you how that looks like right now. Let me just grab something. It is the right. Okay. So for this, the formats, it expects a content type, which will be our file type here. Here's the file type. For the motivational letter, it will be the file type. So we will put that here. And the content will be the base 63 string after the comma. I'm not sure if it still shows here. Oh, it doesn't show here. But yeah, you just have to get the base 64 string after the comma. So we'll have to perform an expression here to split our file contents accordingly. So let me just do that now. For the file type, we said it is the file type, which is the inputs. This is the dynamic content from the item above, just in case you didn't know. So we'll do that. Insert here, the file type, and the content will actually need to make use of the split function. So the split function takes a text. In our case, it will be the base 64 string, and a separator. In our case, we want to split it. I think it's base 64 comma. Yeah. So we will want to take everything on the second, the second index of the array. So what the split function does, it just splits a string on whatever separator you specify, and it gives back an array. So from that array, we want the second item, which is the index 1. So from here, we will say splits, then we go back to our dynamic contents, and what we want is the file contents. A console have to look for it here. Yeah, file contents. So it will split that, and it will give us the file content, or the base 64 string with that has the file content. So we say OK, and yeah, seems like it's worked. Then from here, what we want to do is, with everything captured, we actually want to save whatever information people fill in on this form on a SharePoint list. So we will need to create our SharePoint list. So I go to, this is my SharePoint for Power Junkies, use it for demos. So from here, I'll create a list, and we will call our list, it will be a blank list. We'll name it demo. It's demo form submission, right? So we create that, and we'll need to format our list so it has the fields that we actually want to capture, which is first name, last name, email, and motivational letter. And for motivational letter, we'll actually make use of the attachments column on the SharePoint list, which comes standard with all lists. So what you have to do is click on the title, go to column settings, show and hide columns. It's one of the hidden columns. And here it is. Here's attachments. So we'll make use of that. Now we also need to add fields for first name, last name, email. Yeah. So we'll do that. We'll add column text. It is first name, first name, single line of text, right? We save that. Then we add the last name, same process. Name, we save that. And lastly, email, which is also of type text, email address. Right. Okay, and that's our SharePoint list setup. One last thing I want to change. When you're creating a form, this title column here is a required field, and we're not actually making use of it. So we have to change the list settings for it. So we can actually add items without having to actually populate this field here. So the way we do that, with the list open, you go to settings and go to list settings. And then from list settings, we find this columns. And as you can see, title is required, and we don't want it to be required because we're not making use of it. So we have to change the setting for that. And title, we have it here, require this column to contain information. We say no, because we're not making use of it, and just say okay. Now it's not required. So we can go back to our SharePoint list. And okay, and we hide the title because we're not making use of it. So again, click, left click, sorry, column settings, show hide, and we just hide the title and apply because we're not making use of it. And let me just reorder this. Right, so first name, last name, email, and attachments. That's our SharePoint list done. Then so we go back to our PowerAutomate flow. Let me just re-enter the editor for the flow. Let me just save. So it's able to recognize our new list we just created. Edit again. Then we add a new step, which is create item on SharePoint. Here it is, create item. Then on the site, you have to specify the site. In our case, it is Power Junkies, this one. And the list name is the list we just created, which we called demo, right? So to show the fields, the other fields, we're not making use of title, we leave that blank. First name, search it here on the dynamic contents, first name, which is from this HTTP request. Same thing for last name, and email address. Is email address, right? So we have created the item. Now we have to create or add an attachment. I think it's add attachments. The attachments is actually our motivational letter that we received from the form. So it is add attachments. And again, you have to specify the sites. Right, the list name. The list name is demo submissions. The ID. So the ID will be the item we just created. So once this item has been created, it will generate an ID. And here it is, from create item, we have an ID, so we populate that here. So it will add an attachment to this item we just created. Then for file name, we have file name, which we got from the HTTP request, which is file name. Then for the file contents, we have to make use of this formatted file contents on this compose here. So we do that here, and we look it up. What's it called? I think it's outputs. There it is. compose outputs. So whatever is in here will be pasted here. And yeah, we should be set. Everything should be in order. Let me save it. Then remember we need this URL, so I'll copy it. And once I've copied it, I can go back here. Then we have to enter that URL on our Fetch API right here. So we just remove the commented section. And change this into the URL we got from SharePoint. So we got that, it will send the formatted data, and yeah, everything should be complete. So moment of truth, test out our form, see if it works. Saved everything, so we refresh. Now, John, oh, sorry, okay, John, J, and yeah, attach our file. Right, so before I press the submit button, let's just check. As you can see, the demo form submissions is empty. Let me just refresh. So what we expect to happen is, once we click submit, it will send that data, the form data, to the endpoint on our PowerAutomate flow. The Automate flow will work through the steps that we just did, and it will create item on the SharePoint share with the first name, last name, email, and the attachment document submitted here. So let's test it out. We filled it in and we click submit. Thank you for your application, and we check our flow. Let me just refresh here. This is where you can see the runs. And there you have it. The flow succeeded. And if we check our Automate, our SharePoint, here's our item, John Doe, with the email address and the attachments. And if we open this item, here's the attachments. We open the attachments. And ta-da, it's the document from the form captured in our SharePoint list. And that's the end of the demo. Hopefully you found that insightful. And thank you for joining.